Hello and welcome to this reboot of the survival series. Now, much like the inventory series, I wanted to reboot this one because I felt like we were just retreading the same ground, and I thought what would be a really good opportunity to do is to take the inventory series and continue it on and roll it into a survival series. So rather than remaking the same inventory again for survival, we're just going to continue on from where we left off with the inventory and move on to survival. Now, if you haven't yet completed the inventory system series, do go check it out. The link is in the description. You can complete that first and continue on here as part of a chapter 2, so to speak. So in this refresh, we'll be starting off this first episode and working out how we're going to do our stats. These are going to be things like our health, stamina, food and water, and how we're going to display these onto the UI itself. So let's get started. So we're going to be continuing on from where we left off in the inventory series. So if you haven't finished that, do check it out, as it will give us the inventory that we'll be using for our survival game. So one of the key aspects of a survival game is the stats the player has to manage. These things being health, stamina, food and thirst. And they're the ones we'll be going for, at least in this game. So to get started off, we're going to go into our player character, and in there I'm going to create a new variable for their stats. So I call it stats, and then I'm going to go to its type. I'm going to change it to a string, but then I'll make it into a map. The way you do that is just go to the little icon next to the type over here on the right and change this to map. And its value is not going to be integer, it's going to be a float. So the way this works is that we're going to have a map of all the different stats the player be managing and their associated values. When I click compile on here, I can add the various stats I'll be using. Let's add the first one in. So health, set that to 1. Then we have stamina, again set to 1. Food, 1. And water, 1 as well. Okay, then we're going to make a function that can alter these stats for us. Let's go to our functions list here on the left, and I'm going to choose new function. And we're going to call this one alter stats. And we need to know what stat we want to alter and how much by. So go to the inputs on the right hand side, and we're going to add in the stat. And that will be a string, so it matches our map. And we're going to have a value. It's going to be a float. So in order for us to change the value in our map here, we have to first of all find the existing value, alter it, and then put it back into the map. So drag out the map, and from there you can do find. This will return the value that matches this particular key. The key here we're looking for is this stat one here, so we're going to drag that down here. Now if we don't have an associated stat matching, then we want to return this as false, and it wasn't successful in doing this. So we need to put in a branch first of all for this boolean. This boolean is returning true or false based upon whether or not we found the value. If it's false, we're going to do a return node, and a return node is going to add a boolean to it for success. Okay, and we'll leave that ticked off as false. So on true, this is when we found the value. We want to alter this value here. So I'm going to take the find value, and I'm going to do plus or add, and I'm going to choose the value here. So if I put in a negative value, this will make it go down. If I choose a positive value, it'll make it go up. So with that done, I'm going to drag out my map again and do the add function. This is going to add or basically override a value inside of our map here. So the value we want is going to be this green one from our add node. The pink one, the string, is going to be the stat, which I can just search for here if I wanted to, rather than dragging lines everywhere. And then the true going to add here. Then we'll tie things off with return node returns as successful. Okay, Now, one other thing that we do when we have this is we want to tell our UI, which we're going to make in a second, to update and reflect the changes that have been made on our stat map. So for that to work, we're going to create an event dispatcher to enable this. So go down to event dispatchers here on the left and choose a new one. I'm going to do on stat updated. And when we call this, we're going to send over which player was the one that updated their stats. So we're going to go over to inputs over here, new input parameter, and we'll type in the name character. And the variable type here will be the first person character. So when you compile that, you're going to put that in before the return node happens. Do call. And that will shout out and say it needs updating. The character will be self. Okay, so there's our auto stats function set up. We're going to find the value, increase or decrease the value based upon whatever value we put in there, and reset it back into the map. And then before we finish, we're going to shout out, say, hey, we've updated the stats somewhat. So, speaking of UI, let's save and compile that, and then close that down. So we're going to create a circular bar based for our stamina, food, and water and stuff. So let's go into our content drawer and go to our UI folder. Now I've taken a liberty to bring in some textures for some icons I'll be using. By all means, you can help yourself to it. I got these from gameicons.net. So do a little Google and you'll find it. It's a free resource to get hold of generic icons. That's where I got these from. Okay, so let's create the material needed for our bar here. Create new material, circular bar, and I'm going to open it up. And the first thing we're going to do is turn it into a UI mode domain. So with this selected over here, go over to the left hand side, go to material domain, change it from surface down to user interface. We also want to take into account the opacity mask here too. So we're going to change it from opaque to masked. Okay, so to get a circle, we're going to go for like a ring donut shape. We're going to do a sphere mask. And the sphere mask, we have to put in the space we're going to be measuring this sphere in. And this could be our UV coordinates. So the shortcut for that is hold down U and then left click to create the texture coordinate node. Or you can just right click and search for texture coordinate to find exactly what you need. But with this in here, that'll go into A. And this is a UV space between 0 and 1. Okay, so that's the space we're working in. So B will be the center of that circle. So in a space at 0 to 1, both for X and Y, the center point is going to be 0.5, 0.5. So that's what we're going to do here. Hold it down 2 and left clicking will give us a vector 2D. And I'll put in 0.5, 0.5 to give us that center position. Next on the sphere mask, we've got radius and hardness. Now, radius and hardness can be changed over here in the details. And because we're in a space between 0 and 1, middle point set to 0.5, therefore radius can only be 0.5 in maximum. This. Hardness we're going to leave it alone as a. So you can see here, we now have a circle. Now to get that into a ring, we're going to copy this and paste it. I'm going to change the radius on this next one to be a little bit thinner. We go 0.4. Let's go 0.3. Let's see what that's like. That's not too bad. We'll go for that. And I'm going to subtract this smaller one away from the bigger one. So let's take the big one here and do subtract. Put the small one in there. This will give us ring shape. Okay, and that's how we get the donut ring. Next we have to do is create the bar version of this. That can change based upon a value. The way this works is that we're going to do a gradient that goes around the ring, and then we're going to mask it based upon whereabouts along that gradient between 0 and 1 our percentage lies. So we're going to use something called rotate, vector rotate. No, not rotate. Vector it was vector. Oh wait, radial. There you go. Vector to radial value. Okay, so this one returns a gradient or a different radial expression based upon which one of these we want to use. So to demonstrate, if I put in a texture coordinate into here, and then break this out into multipliers so you can see what they do. That's the top one. Middle one. And oh, there is a linear one. Okay, so one function but three different outcomes, and they all do different things. So these bottom two are the gradients that we want to work with. So this first one is the one that we see, the one in the middle is the one we're going to eventually be using, and this does a gradient going around in a circle, whereas the bottom one underneath it does a gradient coming from the center out. But as you can see, the center point is 0, 0 by default over here. So to move that along, I have to shift the whole frame of the whole UV along. Do that. I'll take the texture coordinate here, subtract 0.5 from it. Now, if I just refresh these, you'll see starting point is now in the middle of the screen. Okay, and as I said, it's this middle one that we want to be using. I'm going to delete the other two. Don't need them for this. Now, one other thing I want to do in here is I want to change the rotation of this. So the way this works is we're going to use the custom rotator tool. So the texture coordinate over here, I'm going to drag out and do custom rotator. And this function requires a rotation center, which is a vector 2D. Put that in there. Just pretty simply just a 0.5, 0.5 again. Okay. And then you've got rotation angle. For that, we're going to put in a scalar value, and that will go into there. We're going to need to promote that to a variable. So we right click on it and do convert to parameter. And we're going to name it, we'll do position. Okay. Okay, so that will go into there. And this multiplier here, you see, will look the same. If I change the position here to say 0.5 instead, then you can see now it's now gone round. It's rotated it around 180 degrees. So 0.5 is halfway. And so we can use this to customize where the starting position is for our gradient. So now we've got that. We want to multiply this by our circle ring here. So let's go multiply. I'm sorry, I'm just going to turn this back to yeah, so multiply here. We're going to get this ultimate design that we want, and we're going to use this in a if statement. So drag that and do if, and if this is the input here, B will be the percentage that we want it to fill up. So we're going to put in a singular scalar in here and convert that to a parameter and call it percent, and plug that into B. Now, if A is greater than B, so if this value here is greater than what we put in percent here, we want this to return 1. So I'll put in a value of 1. Put that in there. And if it's A is less than B, I want it to return 0. I'm going to put in another singular scalar in there, like so. And this is going to feed into the opacity mask here. And then the final color, we'll just do white. Plug that in. Change this to. Now I'm using white because I want to be able to tint it later to any custom value I like, and it'd be just fine. Okay, so the issue we've got at the moment is percentage is set to 0, but we're seeing a whole white square here. So what's going on? Well, first of all, percentage of 0, we want to see nothing appear. So this needs to be inverted, because if I put this at, say, 0.25, it'll work, but we've got 75% of the bar showing, which is the opposite of this. So we're going to do 1 minus to flip this percentage value. So now you get 25% when you put in 0.25. Okay. Now the other issue is if when this changes to 1, you get a full square. Now that's because everything in here has been excluded from selection, therefore it's going to all highlight. So what we're going to do is that rather than using 1 as the value for A is greater than B, we're going to use this subtract up here, the donut shape. We're going to drag that down, that into there. Okay. And that's about it for this. So then we can change the percentage as we like throughout the game, and that will reflect on here. Now, some other things that might help us or make our lives a little bit easier when we're designing this stuff is we may want to change the thickness of our ring here. So the radius from these two, this one's set to 0.5, this one's set to 0.3. That means this has got a distance of 0.2. So if I put in a value for a scalar, and we'll say this has got a value of 0.2 by default, and right click on that, convert to parameter, and this would be line thickness, and 0.2 be a slider min of 0, and maximum will be 0.5. Okay, and then we're going to take that away from 0.5 to get the actual radius we want to use for this, because if we put in 0.2, that would be the difference of this is, that difference would be 5 minus 0.2, 0.5 minus 0.2. So we're going to do subtract node and put that into the bottom. Top part of this would be a part of this would be 0.5 radius. But 0.2 should look the same. If I were to say tweak this down a little bit, I get a thinner line. Oh, get a fatter line. Okay, so 0.2. Good start indeed. Okay. Okay, brilliant. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna close this, and we're gonna convert that to a material instance. So create material instance, and open it up, and you should see our 3 options: line thickness, percentage, and position. Customizing this bar. Good. Okay, so let's now put that into a widget. And we'll do stat bar, and we're going to open this up and put our stat bar in here. This is going to be simply just an overlay, which consists of a image for the bar itself. We name that here img bar, and we'll make it sure it's stretched across the whole entire thing. And then we're going to do another image in there. This one will be the icon. Use. Okay, so the bar icon, I'm going to go to the brush, and I'm going to choose our circular bar instanced version of it. And here you can see the tint and color opacity that we can change to affect this, which is what we're doing. Hit compile there, and we're good. The image icon, we'll use a default one for this. I'll just use a heart, but we'll be making that customizable too for us later on. Okay, so that'll do for that. Next, I need to go to my graph and make those bits customizable. So we need to add a few variables to this. First variable is going to be the stat that we'll be looking at here. This would be a string. Next, we'll know what icon we're going to use. Icon, and that'd be a texture 2D. And then we also want to know about the color. We want color, and that to linear color. And you want to make these all editable, so tick those all on. Okay, so just got to feed these values then into our chartset. So on pre-construct, we'll drag out image bar, and we'll do set. Change that and do color, and we'll do set color and opacity, and that's going to match up with this color here. The next one is going to be the icon, so get that out and do set brush from texture. Well, and we're now going to set the binding for our player character. We're going to get player character, then cast to our first person character, and from there I'm going to do bind event stat updated, and I'll put that on the event to custom made one, do on stat updated. And when it's doing this, I need to tell each of my bars what value they are and check what value they are now. So from the character here, we're going to get the stats. Is their map here. We're going to do find. And put in the stat name here. We then want to create our bar to be working with the percentage parameter we have. Now the only way we can do that is if this is actually a customizable instance of the thing done, but we also want to make sure we've got that reference down here too. So what you do is you get the image bar, and then we do get dynamic material, place that in, then from there I can do set scalar value and change that to percent here. Value obviously coming from this find here. File, save. Okay, so that is all we need to do here. So let's talk about how we actually use this thing. So we're going to go into our player HUD that we made last time in the inventory series, and in here we're going to set up down here in the bottom left all of our stats. So I'm going to start off with our stat bar for health. Drag it in, and on stat bar here you should see stat we want to use. Health. We'll use a heart, and we'll change the color here to red. And we're going to anchor that to the bottom left here and set the size to 250 by 250. File. So at the moment our alpha is on our color, that's why we can't see it. So let's change the alpha up here to 1. Now we can see our bar. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to add a little offset off the edges here because it doesn't hug it too tightly. Do 50 in the X and minus 50. Okay. Next, I'm going to drag another stat bar in. Actually, let's just duplicate this one. And put it back in the corner. And we're going to do the and minus here too. But this one, we're going to actually make work for a smaller, thinner bar for our stamina. Okay, so we're going to put this just to the right of our character, and we're going to just change the position in the X here, be 150 to 300, 325. Yeah, and we're going to change the size of it here from 250 to 150, 150, and we'll make this one stamina, and we'll change that to a lightning bolt, called Alt. Can't remember what I called it. Electric. And we'll change the color of this to be go for green. Okay. There is our stamina and our health bars associated to our character here. Now we also got things to do with food. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in another one by duplicating them back in the left here and just change the position over here to right further. So E500. Perfect. And the Y do minus 50, being up there. But I'm going to make it a bit smaller still. We're going to go 100. 100. And we'll change that one to food. And the icon we want to use in here will be our food icon. And I can't remember what I called it. Chicken leg. There we go. Change the color of that to orange. And we'll make a duplicate of that one. And this will be for water. And change the color of that blue. So we anchor it there again, bottom left, and just move it along in the X here to wherever it needs to make sense. So 625, yeah, that looks right. And then minus 50 in the Y again. Okay, so we have health, stamina, food, and water. Now we did have that rotational thing going on in there too. So if you wanted to, you could overlay these together and get different weird effects and make them start different positions if you so wish. Whatever that is up to you. But there's some cooler things you can do to circular bars to get some really interesting design. But they're all now set up and all linked to our player character and ready to go for our survival game. And there we have it. We've now got our stats appearing on the screen in the form of circular bars. In the next episode, we're going to go through the process of adding a sprint function that will deplete our stamina as we run. You can watch the next episode right now over on patreon.com/Ryan Laley. We can watch all my videos early before everyone else from just $1 a month. Massive thank you to all my patrons and YouTube members for their continued support. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed and I'll see you next time. Bye everyone.